Thanks for tuning in to the Black Sunday podcast. I'm your host, Ian Wilson, a writer and musician and all-round horror fanatic from Fife, Scotland. Joining me on the podcast is Kevin Grossett, a filmmaker and self-proclaimed cinema fanboy living in Edinburgh. So without further ado, dim the lights, pop the lid off your favourite tub of ice cream, and hold on to your loved ones. The dissection is about to commence. Welcome everyone to episode 2 of the Black Sunday podcast. This month we're discussing Sam Raimi's 1987 masterpiece, Evil Dead 2. One of the best films ever made, not just in horror, because we like to keep our viewing set to a high standard here. And I guess once again, before we dive headfirst into the bowels of the film itself, there are few films that are held in high regard as this movie. So like a lot of people, seeing this was a total game changer for me. And from like the top directors in Hollywood right down to guys like us when we were like age 15 or whatever, watching the shitty beat up VHS, as it was in my case, I think. So like the first time I think I saw this film, I remember just being totally blown away when it was like that blend of, the horror with the blend of comedy and this over the top blood splatter that felt like this is what I've been looking for in terms of what movies I wanted to watch. And I guess, at the time, yourself too, when we were like making up our little movie scripts and things like that, that something like Evil Dead was a huge inspiration for me when I was actually getting round to writing sort of for the first time. Just because it kind of opened up this whole new world to me. Back when we were messing about writing short scripts, filming scenes, and to be honest, like a lot of that writing that was coming from me was just a bad rip-off of Evil Dead, or Peter Jackson's Brain Dead as well. Which is called Dead Alive, if anyone is listening in America. And I think a lot of the charm of those films, but particularly Evil Dead, is just that perfect use of the comedy that's laced in amongst the excessive gore. And I guess even it's the excess of the gore that's used that just really enhances the comedy, because it just makes it stupid, funny and brilliant all like rolled into one. So you go in thinking, it's you might think, it's just going to be another horror, and then within like a few minutes you're just like laughing like, what is actually going on here? Well, that's what it was anyway the first time I saw it. As I say, I think I was like 15 at the time, and I saw there's Evil Dead, which was a fairly straight shot at horror. Then obviously Evil Dead 2 was different, but I think I saw Evil Dead 2 or maybe in between them I think I saw Brain Dead, and then Evil Dead 2 not long after, around about the same time. So that and Bad Taste as well. So it was like, that's really for me like when I became like obsessed with this whole horror genre, particularly when it comes to like what they call splatstick. So I don't know if you want to talk about the first time that you came across this flick.
Yeah, I think I was a bit older. I'm pretty sure you actually lent me the box set of Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness. I'd actually seen Army of Darkness when I was ridiculously young though, like 9 years old or something. But it didn't traumatize me. I thought it was really fun, especially, the crazy car and everything, just the skeletons and all that at the end. I think I wasn't really aware that it was part of a series at that point. And then, I don't know, I just didn't get around to seeing Evil Dead or Evil Dead 2 till a lot later. But yeah, Evil Dead 2 in particular is just absolutely insane. Obviously, we'll get into the wild tone and everything later on, but yeah, just hilarious film. I'm not as into gory films as you are, but when it's kind of played for laughs, I think, can be enjoyed by all the family.
Yeah, totally, man. And I think as well, from your perspective, being a filmmaker, there's obviously a lot of stuff going on with Raimi and the stuff he was doing that was pretty insane as well, that you could possibly enjoy. I think that's maybe where you get people that are nerds. I think.
What do you mean?
Weird. I don't think that. Well, like Evil Dead 2, I think you have to probably have like quite a specific either taste or you're into this sort of niche sort of, not just for horror though, it's really hard. I think it could be a hard sell for people. You might want, if somebody's going to watch it with their girlfriend or their boyfriend or whatever, it might not actually be everyone's cup of tea. But I think if you get it, that's kind of what I'm looking for here. If you actually get it, then then it's one of everyone's favourite films, or it's up there. You know what I mean? So I guess I was really going to start talking about a little bit of background before we get into the film as well. And I only kind of came across this stuff by chance when I was just watching I think it was called The Sci-Fi Boys, which was like a Peter Jackson documentary. Just like stuck that on last night. Okay. They were like talking about Ray Harryhausen.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like when I was going, oh man, this really like ties in a little bit here, because obviously they're like totally going on about how awesome this guy was and what an influence he was on Peter Jackson, guys like Tim Burton, George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, and it's all, you know, it was kind of talking about all the stop motion that he did in films like Jason and the Argonauts. And then that's one of the things where I was like, well, I'm guessing that Raimi was obviously maybe inspired by this guy as well, because like you're talking about Army of Darkness with the skeletons, man, it's almost like straight up the same deal.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, you know what I mean? So there was certainly this guy, and again, coming up from the last episode, they were talking about guys like Jack Pierce, James Whale, Fritz Lang, you know, all the guys we were talking about on the Frankenstein episode, who again seem to be like really huge, you know, for inspiring all that crop of guys, and I'm assuming Raimi as well.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that because if you think about it, the stop motion style effects, that only went out of fashion when CGI came in fully, which was around, I guess, Jurassic Park was 1993. So even, you know, up till the early 90s, it was still the predominant way to have animated characters interacting with real characters on film.
Yeah, man. I love it. I think it's like, I prefer it to CGI, you know?
Yeah, I think it's because you sort of instinctively know that it's real, and it's you can sort of feel the organic nature of it rather than it being completely created on a computer. Yeah,
and I mean, I don't have anything against CGI too, but when it goes wrong, it totally like cheapens the film, I think, you know. But then I guess if you're like computer generated image is maybe way more impressive than, you know, a stop motion thing's which is evidently completely fake. But I just like that the kind of, I don't know, there's just something about it that, you know, that's really enjoyable. I actually saw as well that this, and I'm totally going to check this out if I can, because I just was sort of Googling a bit about Ray Harryhausen as well, and there's actually a thing at Glasgow, what's it called? The Gallery of Modern Art.
Oh yeah.
There's a big exhibition about him going on there. I think it was maybe delayed because of coronavirus and us being in lockdown, but I'm pretty sure that like when the restrictions ease, they're putting tickets on sale for that from like March through to September this year or something. So and it's got like loads of stuff, like some of his drawings and like some of the stop motion stuff he created and that. So I think that'd be totally worth checking out as well.
Yeah,
you know, have a wee mandate through to Glasgow and check out some of that.
Black Sunday podcast on tour.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Be all right.
And yeah, I mean, again with the Evil Dead, I didn't really have a huge amount of notes about the first one. I like the first one as well. It's been so long since I've actually watched it. That was one of the things that I was going into this. I mean, with like, I think that like probably when you're on about when I lent you the box set is like, I think there was a time where I was watching these films on a weekly basis and just totally into it, like reading Bruce Campbell's autobiography and all this kind of stuff and like loving it. But then I was thinking, like, I haven't actually watched those films in probably like close to a decade. And then I've obviously watched Evil Dead 2 again now. But I haven't watched the Evil Dead 1, and I didn't get a huge amount of research to do with that, unless you're wanting to weigh in there.
Yeah, I just I looked into basically how Raimi got his start. So Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell had been friends since childhood, and they made a lot of low budget or zero budget films together on Super 8 film, and that was from the, you know, when they were teenagers. But the earlier films were a lot more comedic, because I guess Sam Raimi's main influence seems to be the Three Stooges, which again we'll get to later on. But at a certain point, they wanted to try and do some darker material, because I think thinking about careers and things, they thought it was easier to get into the industry with a horror film, basically. So they made a short film called It's Murder, then another one called Clockwork, and then the next one was called Within the Woods.
Yeah, man, you totally just jump-started my memory there when you talk about It's Murder. I remember Bruce Campbell talking about that in that book. That's great. Yeah.
Any anecdotes?
I can't remember them off the top of my head, but I just got it. So it's like It's Murder with an exclamation mark, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, man. I can't remember all that stuff about it.
Yeah, so as they got more into horror films or decided to research the genre, they went to a lot of drive-through movies and they decided to try and emulate the films that they saw, which were the most gory, and they coined the phrase "the gore the merrier." And I'm not sure what films what they don't specifically say which ones, but I would guess it would probably be things like Suspiria and some of the other kind of Italian giallo ones, because I'm not really sure what else at that time was, going in the more gory direction.
Yeah. It's weird, actually. I remember when I don't remember the exact year that Evil Dead 1 when it came out. It might have been 81 or something like that. But I'm sure it got filmed like 79 maybe. So there was like this, they obviously went and filmed it, and there was a huge, like maybe a couple of years before it actually got released in that, and they were kind of on their way to being like, they were over it, kind of, so to speak. You know what I mean? Just because it had taken up such a long period of time. So I'm trying to think in the 70s, yeah, for sure. And I can't really think. Probably you are probably right there, like all this sort of Italian efforts.
Yeah, well, Within the Woods was 1978, so that was the original short film they did before they did The Evil Dead. And they tried to do a story that was inspired by H.P. Lovecraft, and I guess in a lot of his books he talks about the Necronomicon.
Yeah, man.
So then they took that Book of the Dead concept.
Yeah, for sure, man. There's a huge amount of I think there's a couple of guys actually making films around there. There was that massive amount of H.P. Lovecraft influence. Like Stuart Gordon was doing like Reanimator and stuff right about the same time.
Okay, yeah.
Based on H.P. Lovecraft there too. The only thing I kind of, mind you, this isn't maybe not really related to Evil Dead, the first one. It's kind of like, I suppose what you're saying, like the Super 8. I did kind of sort of read a couple of things about that. How because he must have, like we were saying, from growing up, like making these Super 8 films and stuff like that, that he kind of still subscribed to the same philosophy when he was using the old 35mm there. So I kind of read, and you'll maybe be able to explain a little bit about this, I guess, that when he was doing Evil Dead 2, they shot it at 24 frames per second. Oh no, sorry, they didn't shoot it at 24 frames per second. It was mostly shot at 21 or 22, then speeding up the action to give the scenes an extra punch.
Yeah, I guess I don't want to go super technical for maybe people who aren't really interested, but let's just say the standard frame rate for a film is 24 frames. So if you want to have slow motion, you have to shoot more frames than that. And if you want to have fast motion, you shoot less frames than that.
Ah, cool.
So it's if you think about, we'll get to the plate scene later with the hand and everything, but it's just, if you think about the kind of unnaturally fast motion of that, that's what they're talking about.
That's how he achieved it.
Yeah, exactly. But the whole film, like, the majority of the film was probably 24, and then for specific sequences, they played around with the frame rates and things.
Yeah, that's cool. As we're talking about like Evil Dead, I suppose the main thing about it was the success of it that was maybe unprecedented, but there was a reason that it really did do so well, or in part anyway, was because Stephen King totally was singing its praises from the rooftops as well. I know there's things that we're going to get discussed, the influence and things later too. It was basically, I think, Stephen King and Twilight Zone magazine, they were the ones that were just like, this is the shit, basically, you know what I mean? And that's kind of what got everybody's attention, and then people went to see it and they're like, oh my god, freaking out, you know what I mean? But
yeah, and I was just going to say before that is you were saying that it was kind of, they'd made it and it was on the shelf for a while. It's because they were looking for distribution and no one wanted to put it out until they met this guy called Irvin Shapiro, who was the distributor of Night of the Living Dead. So they screened Evil Dead 1 for him and he loved it. And he was also one of the founders of the Cannes Film Festival. So they managed to screen the Evil Dead out of competition at the Cannes Film Festival.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Really falling on their feet, man. I showed you, it just pays off.
Not too bad.
Bunch of 21-year-old kids that are just making a wee horror film in the woods. This is a dream, man.
Yeah.
Basically, I think they definitely, after Evil Dead, they did Crime Wave. Did you get any much research on that?
Yeah, I looked into it. So it's Campbell said it was a misguided concept, and it was also compromised by studio interference. Just the rough overview is it's a slapstick horror about an inmate in prison. But apparently the tone jumps around a lot, One interesting thing is that it was written by the Coen brothers.
Yeah, totally, man. You think that's like directed by Raimi, written with him and the Coen brothers? I think it'd be like total recipe for success.
Yeah, I had a look at the Wikipedia entry. I mean, they had a lot of problems from there was there was an actress who had a massive cocaine problem, so she fired her makeup artist and decided to do her own makeup. And people said that she showed up on set looking like a clown, and didn't realize, which that's not a good start to the day when money's just being frittered away.
Totally, man.
So yeah, just to finish off on Irvin Shapiro, so they did Crime Wave with him as well, and after the failure of Crime Wave, it was him who suggested that they do a sequel to Evil Dead 2, which I think Campbell and Raimi were not that excited about doing at that point.
Yeah, from what I understand of that, it was basically like after Crime Wave kind of bombed, that they were like, like they had to take this, they just had to seriously look at Evil Dead 2, but even then it was like they had trouble actually getting it, securing funding for it. I think I saw a thing with Raimi talking about where they were taking it basically to everyone to try and get it made, and it wasn't happening. So basically, in fact, he got offered to direct Thinner. I don't know if you came across that, the Stephen King book as well.
He didn't direct the eventual adaptation of that,
I
guess.
Yeah, he rejected it.
Right.
But then Stephen King was directing Maximum Overdrive at the same time, and obviously with him being a huge fan of Evil Dead, that's when he was then, because he was doing Maximum Overdrive with Dino De Laurentiis, is it?
Yeah, Dino De Laurentiis,
Yeah, man. So they were involved on that, and he was then telling him, like, you need to, Evil Dead 2, you get doing that sort of stuff. So then they had a meeting with him, and then I think Bruce Campbell saw some interview with him where he was talking about how the deal was done in like 15-20 minutes, because they basically just showed him the Evil Dead sales abroad, and then he was just like, sold.
Yeah, exactly. It was, since they'd had high foreign sales, he was like on board immediately.
Yeah. So this is after Columbia, Universal, all their kind of places had rejected them. So then they get that $3.5 million budget and the green light, basically, just to go make the movie as well. Which kind of, there's a brief thing that's kind of, I suppose, brought up by, like, there was a debate. And it was always about whether or not the Evil Dead 2 was a remake of the first film or if it was an actual sequel. But that all apparently, well, basically it got confirmed that it was sort of neither, or both, if you want to call it that way. Because saw a thing with Bruce Campbell where he was explaining that the Evil Dead was done by New Line Cinema, and they had the rights to it. And obviously with the second one being done through Dino, they couldn't get the rights to the Evil Dead. So the only way they could get around that is by shooting a recap of the first film with like different actors. So people basically got confused because they thought that Ash was then going back to the cabin.
All right, yeah.
With different people, and obviously it has 2 in the title, so people were like, "Oh, it must be a sequel." But the way they explain it is that if you fit the 2 films together, you watch it, Evil Dead, obviously up to the point where, like, you know how you've got that the awesome like evil entity moving, how it moves through the woods and stuff like that, and it gets Ash. But if you cut that from Evil Dead, and then you go to Evil Dead 2, where there's that, where that happens, where it bursts through the cabin again, and then it hits him, but there's that scene where he's getting like thrown, he's kind of like getting carried through the woods, spinning upside down, all that crazy stuff.
Yeah.
That basically is where the 2 films marry up. So from then, that point on is like, that is where it continues from Evil Dead, like the first film. So it's like,
right.
They call it a requel.
Okay.
So that's how they got there, and actually it does, like, it makes perfect sense when they say that too. You know what I mean? It's obviously just the issues they have, but these, the guys in control.
It's a unique way to go about it. Yeah, I think so. The idea with the rights was that they actually wanted to use the footage from the first film to do the recap at the beginning. Was the idea, but yeah, they weren't allowed to do that. Yeah. So yeah, you were just saying about the budget a minute ago. So just to give you an idea of how things have been scaled up for Evil Dead 2. So Within the Woods, the original Super 8 short film was $1,600. The Evil Dead was $350,000, and Evil Dead 2 was, as you said, $3.5 million. So yeah, quite a jump. I think you were talking about our early filmmaking efforts. One thing that kind of confused me at that time was, I thought Evil Dead 2 was actually an independent film as well, when I was first watching it. And then I was like, wait a second, no, they've got things with like a green screen, and like, how do you do this with a very low budget? So it's the thing where it feels quite scrappy, but there is actually some money behind it,
Yeah, man, totally. It's got that charm about it, but they've got the funds there to make it like that wee bit extra special.
I mean, $3.5 million sounds like a lot of money, but for a Hollywood film, it's not really that much.
Yeah. To be fair, I think if we'd had £1,600 back in the day, we might have been able to do something.
Yeah.
It was paranormal.
Could have paid an actor or something.
Yeah. It was Paranormal Activity, not like... Did they not make that for something totally stupid? Like, it's either like $15,000 or $45,000 or something like that. And it's obviously created absolutely millions, like, in the franchise ever since.
That's that and I guess Blair Witch as well.
Yeah, totally, man.
That was like, the kind of main example of that.
So there are, I suppose, those options for being a success story, and they do seem to be tied to horror. So I guess these guys were totally in the right there to go on and dip their toes in that genre for sure. Yeah. As we know ourselves, even on this, like, on Twitter and things, we've got loads of people in the horror community that are following us, even though we haven't really done anything. So they're really, it's the best, man. Thank you to everyone.
It's the community that cares. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll send out some t-shirts.
Yeah.
The last thing I want to say about the production was just, I don't know if you saw that when they delivered the final film, obviously it's so violent that they wanted the R rating, and in fact, because they were with Dino De Laurentiis' company, it had to have an R rating, or it'll be refused by the MPAA, which is the Motion Picture Association of America, and they were like, well, if we cut this film to an R, it's going to be 62 minutes long. So that was actually one of the executives that said that. It was like, there must have been a time when executives actually cared about films. So the way they got around it was they formed a dummy corporation called Rosebud, which is what you see at the beginning. And Sam Raimi actually directed the, I guess, stop motion rose that blooms on camera,
Oh, yeah, cool.
So yeah, that was the way they got around that, because there was no way the film wasn't going to have the X rating, but there you go.
That's awesome. And then therefore creating this whole, I don't know, I guess I'm trying to think about too if the guys that created the whole splatstick thing, but yeah, this definitely pioneered this sort of splatter. Although I do believe it was George Romero who first coined that term.
Oh, really? Interesting.
I think it's to do with Dawn of the Dead or something like that. He described it as splatter cinema, and that's kind of like where it came in.
Oh, okay.
But it's interesting that too, because obviously, like when I think about horror, I don't it's weird because I don't think of Evil Dead 2 as being a horror film, even though it clearly is. For me, it's more actually being scared. So I always think of things like The Exorcist, which is a film that totally terrifies me, man. Well, even though, like, a lot of people obviously don't think it's weird because it's all like I think it was a director's cut, and it was like, meh, I wasn't really, it was fine. And then sorry, was it? There's one of them. I can't remember which way around it was. Whatever one it has, it's got like the girl Reagan when she like comes down the stairs like a spider, like bent over backwards and all that kind of stuff. The first time I saw that, absolutely shit my pants, man. Because I just wasn't expecting it. And you hear like the total. I think you hear the sound and it's over someone's shoulder, so it's like total in the background. And then you see her total flying down the stairs, man. I was like, oh my god, that was like the scariest thing I'd ever seen in my life at that time.
Yeah, I mean that's maybe a nice segue into talking about the tone of this film. So. I mean, I was looking at the runtime as I was watching it, and 6.5 minutes into this film, Ash has beheaded and buried his demonically possessed girlfriend. It's gone from romance to horror to comedy in that time.
I think when she actually becomes possessed, that it like totally... it really addresses everything about the film as well, where she's like she's got this like total creepy walk and her smile on her face, and there's like those, the milky eyes. And then it goes into like how Ash has absolutely no hesitation reaching for a spade and just like decapitating his possessed girlfriend at all. There's not like he just knows what he needs to do.
It's the combination of that and the the sort of leap into the air, which is kind of like, whee!
Yeah,
You're
and
kind
the
of like,
thing,
okay, maybe I'm not supposed to take this too seriously.
yeah, totally. So there's that. So you're kind of like, what? Laughing, gets decapitated. But then the cool thing after that as well was like with the actual decapitated head, like rolls along the ground, and then Raimi takes that from the decapitation of the head rolling, and he uses it as a cut shot. And the next shot just like totally was smooth, perfect, and Ash like digging her grave with a spade.
Yeah.
So it's like totally, it's just like, oh man, it's just like, I think, yeah, totally. The way that film starts is just like, it definitely sets the tone of like what's to come.
Yeah, I need to jump back a little bit actually. So I really enjoy the stop motion animation of as we're given the story of the Book of the Dead at the start.
Yeah, man.
But there's the thing I wasn't sure about. So the voice that you hear there, is that the voice of the professor who we hear later on the tape recorder?
I thought it was. I have to double check that. I always thought that. Yeah, I'm almost certain that is the guy talking about it.
It sounds like him, and I guess it'd be a nice sort of tie-in because his voice feels very familiar when you hear Ash playing the tape recorder soon after.
In fact, yeah, man, I'm sure in fact, yeah, it totally is, because I think originally the film, the start of it was different, and it was actually, you saw that guy, he's talking, but then you see all the stuff where he's going on about his wife being, like Henrietta being possessed and all that kind of stuff. You actually, it's meant to be that you see him and all this stuff kind of fading about going on as he's talking as well. So they've changed that for obviously the Book of the Dead and things as well. Which is, yeah, it was totally really cool. And I thought that scene had Jason and the Argonaut vibes. Kind of thought that at the time, and then when I saw that thing, as I say, last night, I was just like, Raimi must be influenced by this guy too. Like,
yeah. I was just going to say about the Three Stooges. Do you know about this fake Shemp concept? Do you know about this thing?
Yeah, man. Yeah, I wrote that down as well, actually, to talk about that.
Yeah, so for anyone who doesn't know, the Three Stooges, one of their members, Shemp Howard, died before they'd finished their last films that they were due to make. So they brought in body doubles, which didn't really look that much like him, to be sort of stand-ins for the scenes that he obviously couldn't be in anymore. So Raimi kind of used this idea whenever they needed one of the actors that wasn't available anymore, they'd have someone else playing that part, and then they'd be credited at the end of the film as a fake Shemp.
Yeah. And there's like 8 of them or something, I think, isn't there?
Yeah, I think in Army of Darkness there's like 20, it looks like.
Yeah. I remember that too when I was reading. I'm sure it was whichever is Bruce Campbell's first book was. I think it was maybe like Confessions of a B-movie actor or something like that. But the Three Stooges thing, it's weird how much that is like hugely, like everywhere. If you watch anything to do with it, they always go like Three Stooges for sure. And then if you watch anything to do with like Raimi when he's on it, it's like he's actually just pissing about, like acting as if he is one of the Three Stooges.
Like a stooge,
yeah. It's weird, man, as well. I mean, it's awesome. But and thank God, like he had that thing, because that's basically, literally, I suppose this is what it is, eh? He totally straight up take gags that are from the Three Stooges and then just puts this gory twist on them to put in this movie, and that's where you get that absolutely amazing blend of the comedy and the horror, the violence and the gore, you know?
Yeah, I'm not super familiar with the Three Stooges films, but I know that they're actually known for being quite violent.
Really?
You know, yeah, for what they are. It's not like the Marx Brothers. Like, there's bits with people getting their heads like smashed in cabinets and stuff, and I think there's one where a guy gets stabbed or something. It's not exactly what you might think, yeah.
I was going to say that as well. I've never seen any Three Stooges stuff. When I think about it, it's almost like when people parodied it, when it's like, you know, I guess when people are trying to walk through a door together and they get stuck. That's what I think of when I think of the Three Stooges. But
the Simpsons made a lot of references to it, I guess.
Yeah, totally. There's like, it's huge, it must be like hugely influential to people. I probably love it, I guess if we watched it, I'd probably love it as well, man. Probably should get around to watching something like that. But it's just something I've never had. It's never been on anything that like in modern ways, man. I'd have to go seek it out. It's not on Netflix. You know what I mean?
I don't find other means.
Yeah, need to actually make the effort to go see it, and I'm sad to say I never ever made the effort to go and try and check out the Three Stooges.
So yeah, as part of my research for this, I watched the documentary that you suggested, which was Swallowed Souls, and I believe it's on that where some of the crew members are actually talking about they didn't realize how comedic the tone was going to be until they started doing the chainsaw attack scene, where Ash gets attacked by his repossessed, beheaded girlfriend. Yeah, because they were just like, oh, right, when we read this in the script, we thought it was going to be a lot scarier, and it's coming across as quite funny.
Yeah, man. I love that thing as well when I was watching that scene where it was like the guy gets pushed into the cabin on the skateboard. And I was like,
yeah,
you mentioned that to Kit?
Yeah, the way they achieved it, yeah, it's quite interesting. It reminds me of one time when we put you on a skateboard and push you down my dad's driveway.
Yeah, man.
And put an over-the-top scream over it. So yeah, I guess Raimi was quite a big influence, probably a bit more subconsciously, but yeah, just in terms of all those crazy camera moves and things, he was definitely inspiring to a young filmmaker.
Yeah, man. And I guess the special effects are totally awesome as well. And I've totally drawn a blank on the guy's name, but I'll come back to me too. But like when it's because it is a lot of puppeteering again. You know what I mean? Like you're saying in the 80s, where that was the thing to use.
Yeah, I've got some of the crew members listed down here. Mark Showstrom was
the one kind of
leading the way on it. But
yeah,
the guy that was on his back, I believe that was Robert Kurtzman.
Yeah.
Showstrom,
Mark Showstrom was the guy I think it might be in that documentary as well, actually, where he's talking about how the first thing they had to do was like when Ash stabs his possessed hand, and it bleeds. Yeah. So they were like kind of standing with like they're holding their breath, hoping that it actually works, that they stab it, and it does, but it worked perfectly. And they're like, nice one, able to carry on here. And the guys seem like they had a lot of and I think it's in that documentary too. It looks like they had a total blast working on the film. Seems like
I mean they described themselves as being like the guys from Jackass. They got bought a car by the production or something, which they destroyed. Then they got another car, which they also destroyed. So yeah, having a bit of a laugh.
But yeah, work done.
Exactly. They did the work, so. They worked hard and they played hard.
Yeah. I mean, pretty wild, man. I don't even know. Is that the kind of... They still do it, like... I know, like, the special effects now, there seems like a totally different thing if you're talking about, like, CGI compared to, like, that. Like, puppeteering. Like, where they've got, like, you know, all the things they had with the possessed hand, where it was, like, either... You know, it was either, like, remote-controlled hand, or they had, like, special effects teams who would, like, use their own hand attached to a severed stump, and then they would also use stop motion. So there's, like, this huge amount of, like... I don't know. Like, all that kind of... Do people still... Is this a common thing that still goes on in movies? Like that they make it to actually go to that effort to actually make something physical that they're using in all these sort of, you know, using a bit of ingenuity and stuff to actually achieve the shots they're trying to do rather than just going, we'll just get it on the computer.
I think it's done less and less, which is a shame. Yeah, it's annoying, but I think good directors, what they do is they realise that if you think about how a scene's shot, you know, how a sequence is shot, individual shots, right? So like if you have one shot that's CGI, maybe you could have another shot later in the sequence with something real and it just kind of like sells it.
Right.
I'd seen something where it might have been like The Dark Knight or something where there's like a helicopter crash, so for most of the shot it's CGI, but then you cut away to the Joker or something, then you cut back and they use like a prop helicopter to smash off the ground.
Right,
so
cool.
It's like, you know, it's just so the end part of it at least feels real, and when you see it as a sequence, it doesn't feel completely CGI and weightless and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
I mean, I was going to start talking about some specific scenes later where they actually do a really nice blend of different techniques. But yeah, I just want to talk a bit more about the tone for now. Because what I realized watching it again was whenever you cut back to Ash before the other guys arrive at the cabin, it feels basically like a silent movie. You know, it's just like there's music and sound effects and things, but he's not really speaking very much, and they get it down to the efficiency of him being like, work shed, chainsaw, and then obviously later in the film the famous groovy. Yeah, and it's kind of interesting that like it's just good storytelling because all you need is the word work shed in order to get him out there, you know?
Yeah, man.
It's like, because you see that he's had some sort of idea, but you're like, okay, work shed, all right, and then the next thing is he's in there and, yeah, we know what happens next.
And then he pretty much just starts losing his grip on reality as well, as you would kind of expect probably to happen to an individual that's just, within about 10 minutes, had to kill his girlfriend with a spade.
There's another thing with when they showed the film the first time, I believe it was some of the effects guys were annoyed that everyone was laughing because they sort of felt that they were being mocked. They didn't realise how comedic the film actually came across to an audience that hadn't seen it before or were
All
involved
right.
in the making of it.
Yeah. I guess, yeah, man. I guess if they're like thinking if they saw like Evil Dead and then what that was like with, you know, like no comedy basically, and then yeah, they maybe thought, well, meant to be serious film they're making here. You know, I can understand where they're coming from, but at the same time, you know, you got an eyeball flying across the room and going into someone's mouth and that. You know, it's gonna be like, you know, surely they must grasp the comedy element somewhere.
Maybe
I
they
like
thought
that
people would be really scared by that.
Yeah, jumping on the head and it popping out and stuff. I like the bit where it was like when Ash actually tries to escape from the cabin as well, and he goes back and like the bridge is all like totally curled up. In fact, just to jump back again, which I don't want to do, but I'm just mentioning when you actually see them going to the cabin, it's like again it's that like sort of the fake, you know, car with the fake bridge like going across, that cool shot, and then it's like he goes back and then you know the bridge is like totally like looks like something out of a Tim Burton film or something, like it's like all curled up, and it's still all this has happened. It's still less than like I think 10 minutes into the film, and then you're back to the second night, because obviously you know from when he kicks in, when he gets picked up and spun around, he gets possessed momentarily. So you're like, oh shit, what's going on? And then he basically comes out of his possession because the sun rises, but the sun only seems to rise for like 5 minutes, and then he's back to nighttime again. So it's like the time doesn't seem to actually behave naturally as well in there, which is quite a cool element of horror as well, I think. If you've got that, where you've not got that security of being like, oh, it's going to be daytime for like 12 hours or whatever it might be, you know?
Yeah, it's like you're in a sort of Twilight Zone or something.
Yeah. And then obviously, again, man, he's like delivering all these comedy moments, like when they go in the car chase back to the cabin that ends with Bruce Campbell flying through the windscreen.
Yeah.
Which I think he did. Did he not? Did you see anything about that? It might be in that documentary. I have in my head that he actually got pulled through the windscreen. Like they had like a.
No. I think they were joking about it. I think it's just a dummy or something. But but no, I think they're saying yeah, we're about to send you through the windshield. We're gonna tie a cable to your throat or something.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, I was like half watching that, but
I think it was a joke.
I'm sure it was. It was like his neck anyway.
So just like the thing that's crazy about the tone of this film is, so you've got the horror stuff, right, and then you've got the comedy, but then you've also got melodrama for, if you think about the Linda subplot, right?
Okay.
Because it's like, if you think about the way the music is and Bruce Campbell's acting in those scenes, it's like he's taking it seriously, but it's so overplayed that it leans into melodrama, you know?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, in the film, he's acting the way he would be in that scenario, but to us it kind of looks sort of funny. And I was wondering, like, maybe that's just because we're a Western audience. I know that in Asia, for example, a lot of cultures, they love melodrama and it's taken very seriously. But for us, I don't know, it's like it makes us uncomfortable or something.
Yeah, man. I mean, I can't really think about much stuff like melodrama things that I really to relate to with that, really.
Yeah, but do you know what I mean? In this film, it's like when you see the piano playing and things, and then also when he's got the pendant at the end.
Yeah, sure, totally. I never really picked up on that, to be fair, like, but you're totally right. We're talking about it.
It's not paying attention. I mean,
that's not really, as I say, that's not really something I've really paid too much attention to. The ghost piano playing was kind of, it's kind of, because I'm trying to think of that scene there as well, because he's weeping, and he's like all dirty. And it's just like this ghost piano playing it as well. Yeah. That then goes to the bit where it's like there's a stop motion corpse of Linda dancing outside to the ghost piano, I'm assuming. Yeah. Which then kind of seems like it's all happening in his own head. But yeah, man, that's all like totally fucked up. But then it's when her severed head falls in his lap and says hello lover and bites his hand,
Yeah, and then you're back into horror/comedy again. It's interesting, like every 30 seconds it seems to sort of switch it up, but in a way that you find quite enjoyable.
Yeah, man. I think that's the bit as well where obviously when he says work shed and then it kind of goes back in it. Yeah, it's like they're just... I think that obviously like with Raimi when he was on about the things with Crime Wave was, you know, I think he said that one of his criticisms of it is the film didn't know what it was because he was trying to make it all these different things and he failed basically. But obviously in Evil Dead 2 he was trying to make it these different things until he actually played it really well. Like we're talking about after the bit in the workshed and all that kind of stuff, that's when I feel like the movie kind of, it kind of changes, and it's kind of like the point where Ash, you kind of get the feeling it's just like, oh, he's not going to die. He's like, he becomes like just in control of the situation and turns into like a badass. Does that make sense?
Yeah. There's one bit I actually thought, if you're watching it for the first time, you might assume that, you know, the second time Ash gets possessed.
Yeah.
When he like pops up.
Yeah, man, we're not expecting it.
Yeah, so I was thinking, like if you hadn't seen the film before, you might assume that he was gone at that point, and then that the Annie character was going to take over as the lead.
Yeah, man.
Like something like Psycho. After I've forgotten her name. She gets killed anyway, and then you're with Anthony Perkins for the rest of it.
Yeah, it's not like Jamie Lee Curtis's mum.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember her name either.
It's really embarrassing that I've just forgotten her name.
Yeah, man. I know what you mean though, because like the first time I watched Psycho, I wasn't expecting that at all. When it was just like it was all about her, and then that happens in the shower scene, and then it's just like totally changes. It's like, well, yeah, man, that could have been totally gone the same way with this film for sure.
Yeah, Janet Leigh. Sorry to everyone listening. So I was actually thinking of the character name though, which I couldn't remember, and yeah, Marion. Yeah, sorry. When Marion dies, and then we're with Norman Bates for the rest of the film. I was thinking with this, it could be kind of interesting had they decided to go that way, where Ash was just demonic after that.
I don't know. I guess maybe it's just because we're obviously so used to Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness and everything, where it being like, obviously, it's the Bruce Campbell show. That it's be hard to imagine. It would have been cool, for sure, if they had done that. Because, I mean, obviously had no... Like, I mean, in the first Evil Dead film, Ash was supposed to be, like, die at the end. You know what I mean? He was supposed to be dead.
Right.
So, yeah, it would have been cool if you'd just been like, right, so we're going to kill him off and take it in another direction. Because I really like that Annie character, too. And just the whole, like... I guess the balance of the film between that, how they're like the intellectual ones as well. Bruce Campbell's kind of out of his element. That's like the badass hero kind of thing, and you've got like Bobby Joe and Jake that are like the kind of hillbilly sort of characters as well, that are kind of, it's like a contrast the whole way through it. Yeah, and
there was another level to that as well, because Sarah Berry, who played Annie, she was actually a trained actress, whereas Dan Hicks he didn't have any acting experience before that film. So it's kind of weird. It sort of emphasizes the, let's say, class divide that you have in the film.
I like that with Dan Hicks, like when he got the part pretty much because he just like acted crazy, and then he also could remove his teeth. Like he just had teeth missing and stuff like that, and it's like, you're perfect.
Yeah, that's exactly happy with that.
What I'm looking for. But yeah, you can totally tell that what you're saying there with Sarah Berry. What's her name? Annie was that?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. You can see that she's like, she has that kind of, I don't know, that kind of, you get that impression that she could be like one of these, the actresses that would like throw wine in somebody's face or slap them or something, this like massive character. I like that, just to go back to the film as well, just sort of, I think you've already been introduced to those characters, how they're arriving to, obviously the cottage is owned by her parents. They're basically going back where Bruce is, which in fact, I've seen this film so many times, man. I never really paid attention to, like, why is he even in the cabin, like Bruce Campbell? Did they just find the cabin and go in?
Nah, they say it at the very start. It's he's taking Linda there, I guess, for a romantic retreat, and she's immediately like, what if the owners come back? But they say something about it in the car, about it not being far or something like that.
Yeah. Cool.
So it was like his plan to take her to a abandoned cabin.
Yeah,
for a fun weekend, which goes badly wrong.
Yeah, well, classic. Yeah. I like it how, kind of in between the scenes as well, before you kind of get introduced to Bobby Joe and Jake, and after Annie and Ed are sort of on their way there, and Ash is obviously in the cabin. I think like it's one of my favourite scenes, like when the rocking chair is like moving by itself.
Oh yeah.
But then it's like his reaction when he like reaches his hand out to stop it. And obviously it stops, even though he's not touching anything, but it's like a person was there. And he kind of like puts his hands up and freaking out. And then he goes across to the mirror to kind of look at himself, and then he comes bursting out of the mirror and like starts choking himself, or getting choked by his reflection, which then turns into him choking himself when he goes back and stuff like that. It's just like, I love that, man. Just how that totally like messes with your mind about like what is actually real and what's not real that's going on in this cabin, you know what I mean? And then obviously that kind of immediately leads into his hand going bad and then attacking him. which gives you that, like, when he's like, "Give me back my hand," you know, kind of thing. That line, which is like total class as well.
Yeah, because it's that again. It's right on the line. It's sort of like funny and sad, tragic. You know, it's got everything.
Yeah, man, and it's got to be hard to direct that and to deliver it. I mean, it's obviously like, I don't think this film would really work if it wasn't for the fact that obviously Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell grew up together, just absolutely knew exactly like each other, what they, you know, it's obviously like a team effort, you know what I mean, that they could get the best out of each other.
Yeah.
As I say, the film kind of then goes on to the bits where, you know, where Bobby Joe and Jake get introduced and they meet Annie and Ed who are on their way there, but the bridge is, you know, collapsed, curled up or whatever, which gets to that other cool sort of bit where they end up taking a trail to get to the cabin. It goes back to Ash in the cabin being attacked by his own hand, which is what you were going to mention, I guess, with like the smashing the plates off his head, and then when he grabs himself by the collar and then does a flip.
Yeah,
which is like someone like, it reminds me like someone like Buster Keaton style, like slapstick or something.
Yeah, or even Jackie Chan or something. It's the fact it just plays out in that wide shot, so you're in no doubt that he actually did it.
Yeah, man.
You know, it's like they didn't cut to a close up and some like stunt guy.
Yeah, and I think he did it like total multiple times. Like they just kept redoing the shot. It was like, right, another take, and he did it. And it's just like going around smashing stuff up, smashing plates up. And it's just it's obviously not choreographed. Get my teeth back in there, man. Choreographed. That he's just like basically going wild and doing things, and then like flipping himself over, man. I can't even imagine doing that. Like it would just absolutely be not now that we're in our 30s. Like that would just knock the wind right out of you.
Yeah, I don't know how old he was, but
it'd be in his 20s.
He made it look so easy.
Yeah, man.
But yeah, just speaking of the hand scene, there's one thing I thought was absolutely brilliant watching it again. So after he's cut the hand off and it goes into the wall, think about this from like a filmmaking point of view. They want to show that Ash is listening to the hand behind the wall, right? So it's like, how do you do that? So it's like it's done with a mix of like sound design, and then they just do this massive close up on Ash's ear.
Yeah,
and then the climax of that is you see his ear twitching a little bit, and immediately after that, he like gets a bullseye and just shoots the hand. It's perfect. It's amazing.
Yeah, I never thought of it in that way as well. Like how they're actually trying to show the audience like what's actually going on there. That's awesome.
Yeah, because it's quite a sort of tricky thing. Like it's like I think about if you got a bunch of film students and said, "Okay, here's the problem. How do you show this?" Like, would they all come up with that, or would you know? Because if you don't do it right, then it's like it's confusing for the audience. Yeah. Yeah,
man. And they got the thing, like obviously with Raimi, where he's actually like putting everything into the film. I like the bit when obviously they're talking about the bit where he stabs the hand and it bleeds, and then he's got that "who's laughing now" kind of line and stuff like that, and then cuts his hand off, which is insane with the chainsaw, and the blood just like totally spraying him in the face as he basically does like it all screams like a maniac. But then Raimi gives you that little visual gag as well when he puts when Ash he puts the bin over the severed hand and then he weighs it down with the books that's got that on the top. It's like a farewell to arms.
A farewell to arms, hilarious.
Yeah, but obviously as you're saying there, when the hand escapes and it goes in the walls, there's something about that scene too that like where he's got the shotgun. It's like a hunting sequence that it feels like kind of like cartoon. You know what I mean, man? Like just I don't know, like one of these like Bugs Bunny type things.
I think it's a combination of the way they shoot it, his performance, and then just the sound effects and everything that they add for the hand, you know.
Yeah, and it was a weird kind of comedy there too, like with because the hand, which is obviously evading him rather like no bother, when it gets caught in the mousetrap, and then he laughs at the hand getting caught in the mousetrap, but then the hand gives him the middle finger and then kind of like scuttles off again. I just thought that was that's one of the things that's that whole little bit, I was just like, it's weird. You know, I love the film and stuff like that too, but I was just like, I don't know, it's just a weird thing to suggest, if he was writing it, what we need here is for the hand to get caught in a mousetrap and then to give him the middle finger for laughing at him. It's like, I don't know if I can really how to explain this as well, but just that it's like the interaction between a hand and the main character as well, you know what I mean?
Okay, it's almost it's like the hand is a little guy or something.
Yeah, it's a character in its own. Well, I guess it is a character in its own right, because obviously comes into play a few times through the film.
Yeah, did you know that the hand part is influenced by Scott Spiegel, the other writer of the script? He'd done a short film about a hand back in the 70s. Because he was friends with Raimi as well, when
Yeah.
they were younger. So yeah, I think Sam Raimi had said, "Oh yeah, I'd like to use that hand idea."
Yeah,
somewhere
man.
down the line. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember seeing a thing about that too, where he was like talking about that. I think obviously when he was speaking to him, he said because the guy didn't understand what he was trying to go with the film, and then he was basically like saying it was a mix of that thing he made with the hand. And horror or Evil Dead, I guess the first film, and then he was like, "All right, cool." And that's when they got on the same page about how they were going to write it and stuff like that. And that's when it obviously became awesome. Started like laughing and getting all the gags in and stuff too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't. Man, I wish I could remember. What do you say? What the film was called? I can't remember what it was.
I've forgotten the title.
Yeah, man.
Might just be The Hand.
I can't remember if I made a note of that or not. But it's man, for sure. And then it goes into the bit which is insane with when he actually shoots the hand through the wall, and it's like that little trickle of blood that then seems to turn into the I guess the pressure of about 7 fire hoses like blasting out of the wall. It goes from like being red blood that turns to black before receding back into the wall, which I'm guessing was like a reverse shot or whatever to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
But I did notice there that like Raimi, he uses quite a few colours for the blood throughout the film. So obviously he's got the red with the insane like amount of that too, especially the bit where he's chopping off the hand, and I think in the work shed or the tool shed bit when it splashes the light bulb and turns red and all this kind of stuff.
And when is it Ed gets hacked up and it's like green blood?
Yeah, and at the end I think it's blue when there's like that big monster or whatever it is that they're like fighting and stuff. So he's like playing around with all these weird colours and stuff as well, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's absolutely manic.
There might be more.
I mean, another scene that I think my favourite part of the whole film is just after Ash has been put into the fruit cellar, and then the tension of that entire thing. I love how the tape recorder is used as a storytelling device again. So it was used earlier, obviously, when Ash is listening and getting the sort of backstory of the book and everything. But then it's like, it's Ash's slow realization as to what's going to happen. It's just absolutely amazing. It's like, it's showing all the characters interacting to, "My beloved Henrietta, I buried her in the fruit cellar." And then you see like Ash like, "Oh shit."
Yeah.
And then like, obviously there's that stop motion shot as she pops out of the floor. And then his scream immediately after that is just absolutely amazing.
It's just the way you kind of see him, and he's like nonchalantly just sort of like sitting at the bottom of the steps, like resting his arm on a step, as you say, like listening away to what's going on and having that, just the slow realization about what's down there with him as well. It's man, it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I was going to say, if anyone's not seen the film, stop listening now. We're going to spoil it all.
Oh yeah, spoiler for sure.
Pause it, watch the film, come back.
Yeah, man. I think you're talking about favourite scenes as well. Like, I think my favourite scene is the one that was maybe just before that, where the whole puppeteering element really comes into play, where it's like Ash proper loses his mind when he starts dancing with all the objects in the room.
Oh yeah, the laughing room.
Yeah, man. I don't know why. The bit particularly like where it's like he starts going up and down with the lamp, and then they stop at the same time, and then total burst out laughing and stuff too, man. Like every single time I watch that scene, man, it just absolutely makes me piss myself. Like, and then obviously the best thing about it, I think, is that because it's like they're all laughing and he's laughing and stuff, and then that happens and he's laughing, but then his laughter turns to like he just starts screaming as well, which he then basically cuts right out of, and basically when you hear, obviously it's when all the others arrive at the cabin and he fires a shotgun at them because he obviously assumes it's some sort of evil presence, and then as we say, that's the bit where he gets beaten up and then thrown in the cellar.
Yeah.
And it's, I guess that then turns to the bit where, because they've listened to the tape recorder, that's when the dad basically confesses to murdering his possessed wife Henrietta, and then Henrietta, who's played by Ted Raimi, bursts up through the ground and like starts talking like all like creepy and stuff like that about how there's someone in her fruit cellar, and then says that it's like someone with a fresh soul.
Yeah, well, the thing that's great as well is it's like you were talking about earlier. So the first shot you see of Henrietta is stop motion as she pops up, and then I think we cut back to Ash for a scream, and then when you cut back again, it's Ted Raimi in the costume.
Yeah,
so it's like it's selling the illusion through different effects,
Yeah, man, and the voice has got like a weird effect on it too. It's like that kind of I don't know how you would do it, but it reminds me of like if Mr. Blobby was actually like, if you could actually understand what he was saying. You know, it's got that weird, like, I don't know, just that weird noise effect to the voice.
Is anyone not from the UK going to know who Mr. Blobby is? I barely know who he is. I'd forgotten about him until you mentioned him.
To be fair, he just popped into my head there when I was thinking about that scene, and I guess it's not just anybody that's not from the UK, it's probably like anybody under the age of 30 years old probably has no idea who Mr. Blobby is.
I'll just say that Mr. Blobby is scarier than anything in this film.
Yeah, for sure. Oh man. But that's that whole thing with it's like the Mr. Blobby voice, I guess, then goes into the bit where he's like freaking out and he's trying to get out the fruit cellar, and then like, that's when she starts basically like just beating everybody up, and they jump on the hatch to try and to get her back down and crushes her head, and then the eyeball is when the eyeball pops out and flies through the air and lands in Bobby Joe's mouth. That was that was the thing that was. One of the ones that was straight up lifted, like from the Three Stooges. Because I remember reading the thing where, like, basically the Three Stooges did the Three Stooges. They did that gag, but they used a grape, whereas Raimi used an eyeball.
Yeah.
He used an eyeball.
Yeah, he upped the ante a bit.
Yeah, man. But it worked, you know what I mean, man? Totally cool way to do that too.
Yeah, they called it the flyball eyeball. They had all these like funny little names for things. So it's like. They called the, I guess when you see Henrietta's true form, you know, with the long neck, that's called Pee-wee or something.
Oh, yeah.
And there's loads of weird stuff. And then, like, the different camera rigs were called different things. So the rig they used to send Bruce Campbell flying through the forest, that's called the Samo-cam. But then the one that they used that smashes through a couple of car windows is the Ramo-cam. So it's like they just had a name for everything.
But with these things, were those kind of like were those shots actually like used, or did they like literally come up with this stuff?
Oh right, do you mean was there a precedent? I don't think so. I think they were just wildly inventive with the things they wanted to do with the camera, and they just had to figure out on the day. I
think it because there was not a whole competition they had with the Coen brothers when they were doing Raising Arizona, and it was like who. It can do the most outrageous things with the camera kind of thing.
Yeah, I think so, because Raising Arizona's got a cool one where it's like the camera is like flying down a street, goes over a car, and then goes up a ladder into a window as this woman turns around and screams because she realises that her kid's been kidnapped.
Yeah, man. I never thought that's good. That's long. That's another one I haven't watched for so long. Yeah. I think that was one of the things, you know, like I was saying, you know, having watched this film as well so many times when I was younger, that my biggest worry after having like a decade of not watching it was going to be like, how is this going to be? Like watching it again, man. I didn't want it to be awful, but like I think, you know, within like the first minute, I kind of realised, nah, this is still absolutely amazing. You know, like right through, and there is no other point. You know, there's no other point in the film I think where there's no bit where there's like a lull. You know what I mean? It moves really fast, and it's only like I think it's an hour and 25 minutes or something. So it's like. It really, you get through it, and it's just I don't know, man. It's just like it's either gags or there's just something like back to back that's just absolutely amazing. You know what I mean? We could go back probably and talk about every single scene like right through it, and it's all of them are pretty much amazing.
Yeah, because the times when it does slow down, it's usually those scenes are used to build tension. Yeah, and I realized like you know, there's that scene where it's basically just everyone looking around the room. As the camera kind of pushes in on them, it's like you'll see two characters, then you'll pan off to, I don't know, what is it, that stag's head on the wall. And then it'll just it's interesting, those kind of scenes as well, because they kind of make it out as if the evil it's in the sort of fabric of the cabin, you know, it's like in the wood, it's in the walls and in the floor and everything. Yeah. But if you think about how they actually shot it, it's really simple.
Yeah, man. They've created that tension and stuff too. I like that. The thing I think that maybe illustrates that the best for me anyway, when Jake's looking out the window and they have that, as you say, there's that kind of like there's that quiet moment, and then he looks and he says the trail's vanished, that the trail they came in on is no longer there. Yeah. Which is like great horror, I think. You know what I mean? But like it's an absolutely terrifying prospect that you know what I mean, and that the woods would then, you know, they're alive, it moves, it changes, all this kind of stuff. But I do kind of have a bit of an unusual fear of the woods, if I'm honest. Like, maybe it comes from watching these films when I was younger, I don't know.
I think you might have mentioned that before. But yeah, it's just funny with the trail as well, because I don't think we ever saw it. It's mentioned twice.
Yeah.
Once we're going to go on the trail, and the second time the trail isn't there anymore.
Yeah, they do. You do kind of see them when I think at one point when it's like they're carrying the bags. You know, they're walking on the trail, and then he's like, because he agrees to like carry her bags for whatever it is, like $10 or something like that, and then it's like a wee gag that she's got. Like he thought she only had like a purse or something like that, and she's got like loads of luggage, and he's like humping it along the trail kind of thing. So that's when it's kind of cuts to them on their way to the cabin, I think. But the whole thing, as for like the trail vanishing and that kind of horror aspect as well, I don't know if that's the kind of thing that would be a sort of thing that it might have inspired something like the Blair Witch Project. You know what I mean? I know that was kind of based on meant to be like a true, not a true event, but like a local legend or whatever. But I just like that aspect, how the film gives so much to I guess other filmmakers, writers, and all that kind of stuff as well. Where there's just something that could be so simple as that. As just, a trail's vanished, and you actually think about it and you're like, oh man, like that is, for like if I think about it, I'm just like, that is like the most terrifying thing. Like your escape is gone. You know what I mean? Like you totally lose sense of, like, it's nighttime all the time. The daylight doesn't behave properly. Now the woods are changing and you don't know where you are. You're totally like out, you're lost.
I guess they have to set it up so that the other characters feel the same way that Ash feels earlier in the film.
Yeah, because I guess that's the whole point of how he kind of becomes like, he kind of takes control of the group. Is that he's sort of not a veteran, but he's a step ahead of them as well. So he kind of takes control. He's kind of seasoned to it, and it kind of at the point as well where they're just kind of getting to grips with the fact that the evil is pretty unrelenting, and it just keeps like flowing like through the whole film and stuff as well. I think just after that scene's when they get that little weird like ghost effect of the dad explaining that they need to read the passages. Basically, you need to read passages from the Book of the Dead to get rid of the evil, which is then, a brief that you're sort of like, I guess perfect for moving the story along, because they're like, okay, so now we know what we have to do. And then that's immediately the point where Bobby Joe freaks out because Ash's severed hand has made a return and is holding onto her hand. Like she totally tears off into the woods. And that was another thing as well. Obviously, in like the first Evil Dead film, there was a whole thing about like the lassie getting raped by the tree, which was like unnecessary, but also deeply regretful, I think, for Sam Raimi. But again, he was 21 years old. You know what I mean? So he probably was like, well, this will be. And I suppose if they're trying to up the ante as well, being like, to shock people, then mission accomplished. Like,
I mean, I think it probably was just shock value they were going for, but I know he definitely said that he wouldn't have done the same thing again. And so we're not really sure what happens to the Bobby Joe character, but it seems like she more meets
it's like, well, she doesn't. You kind of think. Death. Yeah, it's kind of like you think that, oh man, he's going to do the tree rape thing again, but then she ends up getting like tangled up. And then just basically dragged along the ground for like 100 miles an hour, full force into a tree. Yeah. Which I think Raimi, he kind of uses her going into the tree as like a nice cut to move into like the Book of the Dead, pages being smashed open. Yeah. So which is I don't know if that's supposed to be some sort of visual of like the books, like the glass that it's encased in, like smashing about. It's kind of the aftermath of maybe what happens to her, which I guess like dragged into a tree or something like that.
Yeah, possibly. They do a lot of nice cuts. There's one where it's one of these crazy camera shots. I think it's when it's chasing Ash at the beginning into the cabin. So it's like
when you go from walls.
Yeah, but like at a certain point, there's like a quick black frame which takes you from the normal location to a set, if you know what I mean. But you don't notice, it just feels like one long sequence,
That seems actually wild as well, man. I think that's maybe the point of the film too, where I was just like, this is major nostalgia, like for me watching back there when all that stuff was going on. That's when I was the point when I was like, nah man, this is not like it's not like, I still love this film basically from that point on and stuff as well. And
it just builds up to that insane climax. The whole film just leads up to this thing where it's like, all right, the trees are now uprooting and attacking the cabin.
Yeah.
And there's a giant, almost dinosaur type thing that sticks its head in.
Yeah. Well, basically, I'll just quickly fast forward to that point as well, because we're getting to the end of it too. So they break open the Book of the Dead, and then they're looking through it, and you actually see Ash in the Army of Darkness as the chosen one that's mentioned in the book, with like his chainsaw hand and all that kind of stuff. That's obviously picked up on, I guess, not by him at the time, but it is him in the book. So they've got to basically read the passage from the book that first makes the evil manifest itself and another to create a portal to banish it. Which seems like it's going to be all straightforward until Jake basically decides that he wants to go find Bobby Joe and then takes control of them all and throws the pages into the fruit cellar beside Henrietta, who's still skulking about down there. And that's then, I think, like the bit you were talking about, man, like that's when Ash becomes possessed again, and that's when you kind of think that Annie's going to take over.
Yeah.
Because he basically throws Jake, just tosses on the side. She starts, protecting herself. That's another thing too.
Well, he more than tosses him aside. I mean, he throws the guy about 100 miles per hour headfirst into a tree.
Yeah, just like
I was pretty sure that was going to be the last we saw of Jake, but no, somehow comes back and he doesn't seem too bad.
Momentarily comes back. Yeah, that's what I was. Yeah, man. That's what I was going to mention. I never really picked up on this in the story at any point. All the times I watched it too. But Annie's she's armed herself with what looks like a mythical dagger. And I was like, what was the story with the dagger, man? Is that mentioned at any other point in the film?
I think you see it briefly when Ed says, "Oh, look, here's your father's stuff on the desk," but really briefly. And I guess the implication is meant to be that they found it in that castle.
Ah, right, okay.
That you see in the flashback.
And it looks like something like Zelda or something like that.
Yeah.
And then, basically she ends up stabbing Jake with the dagger because Jake's trying to get back in the cabin and she thinks it's possessed Ash trying to kill her. So when the door opens, she just basically stabs Jake. Although, he's not dead. Still not dead, man. That guy still going. Been thrown into the tree. He's been stabbed with a mythical dagger. That's the bit where you get a really cool shot as well. It's like evil Ash, totally lit up at the window. So it's this really cool, unique take, I thought, as well, how the hero now changes to becoming the threat to the good guys, I guess. And then it's the whole bit where Annie's dragging Jake, which I don't know if you saw that too in the documentary thing, where it's she actually did that. So her acting is genuine, but she's
it's a long shot as well, and it's funny because eventually she's telling him to shut up and stuff. Yeah,
man. Well, I can imagine the guy's he's a pretty big guy, as you say, it's a long shot because at first I was well, maybe he's sort of pushing himself along with his foot, but he's not because you can see his feet quite clearly. She's dragging him. And that's
I think that's why they held the shot so long because I think they knew that it would just sell a lot better if you don't cut. Just keep it going. Some
sort of Kubrick effect there, kind of torturing his actor.
Yeah.
And obviously then Jake does meet his end, but almost actually met his end in real life. Did you see that?
He almost drowned or something because they used so much fake blood.
Yeah, it's basically Henrietta bursts up from the cellar and starts dragging him into the cellar head first, which then starts spraying out fire hose again style blood while he's getting, I guess, eaten, it's supposed to be, or whatever. But when they actually shot it, it was they fired the fake blood, but it didn't come right out the cellar. It hit the hatch lid and then came back down into his face, so he couldn't breathe. He's nearly drowned basically in fake blood. But I think obviously it was 3 to 5 seconds or whatever it was that they actually fired however much it was, the volume of the fake blood up there. So he ended up just basically choking, going up his nose and all that kind of stuff, but still, health and safety, and that's the whole point where it kind of comes to a sort of when Ash kind of comes back, is when he finds that necklace, which I guess you were talking about as well.
Yeah.
That kind of snaps him out of his evil phase to bring him back into being the good guy hero again. But it's still got to go down into the cellar there to kill Henrietta, which is a cool kind of almost kind of like a computer game, like a fetch sort of, when you've got to go pick up various pages that are all scattered through this cellar where this evil thing is.
Oh yeah.
But then before that's when you get obviously the immortal groovy line when he gets his shotgun and turns into the badass, basically an action hero.
I mean that Edgar Wright refers to those as tooling up sequences, and I think the sort of lineage of it, I think it started probably with Commando with Schwarzenegger.
Sure.
There's a really good one in that, and then in Aliens you have Ripley do something similar, and these both came out, a year or two before Evil Dead 2, so I guess they were probably the main influences on it. But I mean, Raimi does it again in Army of Darkness, right?
He does.
And all that,
yeah, man.
Yeah, it's just such a surprising line as well, because obviously we know it so well, groovy, but Just like imagine just the first time you watch it, it's like what? Like why do you say that?
Yeah, but I think that would be first time I heard that. You would just. I think I did laugh the first time I heard it because it's just so unexpected as well.
It holds on his face for ages as well. It doesn't just like cut immediately. It's like he's just thinking about what he's just said and what he has to do.
He knows what he's got to do for sure, man. Going down in there. There's a cool thing, and I do actually remember this as well from when I was writing my Evil Dead fanboy phase. When Henrietta bursts up she escapes the cellar and she starts attacking Annie and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
And when Ash kind of like he whistles to get her attention, and you see Ted Raimi like turn his head, and you can actually see like the sweat pouring out of his ear, like Ted Raimi, because it's like he's wearing obviously a crazy suit. And it's apparently when they were filming it, it was like insanely hot in the cabin and stuff like that. So he was just basically drenched in sweat, and they had to basically keep giving him water so he didn't dehydrate and stuff. But literally, if you watch that bit, Ash whistles, and then Henrietta turns her head, and if you look at the ear, man, it's like sweat pouring, and I mean pouring out of the mask.
Oh yeah, it's mixed with talcum powder as well, so it's got this kind of weird, kind of milkish quality. I think it sort of helps it actually.
Oh yeah, totally, man. It's man, for sure. It's definitely the kind of like, oh man, like minging juices coming out of this decomposing woman kind of thing.
I think it's also funny how it goes to the point as well of like Ash just punching Henrietta at a certain point, just like lamping her. It's just not what you expect at that point, because you're like, these demonic things, because it's never really clear how they make the other people demonic, Is it like a sort of vampire thing where if you're bitten, because that seems to be what happens with Ash in the hand, but then later on I think Ed, he just gets kind of thrown against a wall, and then the next time you see him he's possessed, and then Ash later on is just possessed. It's just strange how like these things kind of, I guess we don't have to explain it, you just go along with it.
Yeah, man. Actually just reminded me too, just quickly there, we're talking about like the health and safety aspects of things. The bit where, I think it's when Ed gets like his face grabbed, that's how he ends up becoming sort of possessed. I think he got his nose broken or something.
It was the guy played Jake.
Oh, was it Jake that got his
because Ed grabs him.
Oh, right, okay. And then he does that.
And it's when he reaches up,
And then there was a part where like Jake has to punch Ash when they first get to the cabin, but he accidentally kind of slipped and actually punched him and ended up like knocking Bruce Campbell's teeth loose as well.
Yeah, it's pretty disturbing.
Yeah, man, it's just like, oh man. So yeah, throughout that whole film there was like major safety issues. Like they're all, I mean, I suppose they're all just like, it made their careers, so paid off.
So it was worth it. It was worth almost losing your teeth.
Yeah.
But yeah, like just in terms of how it ramps up to that climax, it's funny because there's a certain point where it seems like Ash and Annie are going to be lovers, because he kind of holds her like he held Linda at the beginning. But then his reaction to her death is pretty funny, where he's just like, "You did it, kid," or what? What's it he says? He's like, "Good job, kid," or something like that. I think it's "you did good, kid," or something like that. Yeah, and he's just like, okay. He doesn't seem particularly cop about the fact she died. Maybe just at that point he's like, this forest's killing everyone, so just whatever.
Yeah, well, I think he thinks he's got away with it. You know what I mean? Because that's the whole I guess the tense climax. Like you're talking about, that weird evil things actually manifests itself and bursts through the door, but it looks like a dinosaur or whatever. It's like when it's bleeding, that blue shit that we're talking about, and then Annie gets stabbed by the Ash's severed hand with the mythical dagger from Zelda or whatever that we're talking about, and you think, oh man, she's dead before she's got a chance to actually speak the words that's going to open this portal to banish the evil. But then basically with her dying breath she manages to utter the words, and then it goes flying, and then Ash is obviously like, I think that's when he says that thing like, you did it, kid, or something like that, and you think, oh, there's a happy ending for Ash, man, he's okay.
But
only for the fucking door to get blown off its hinges or whatever, and there's like a massive portal outside sucking in the whole forest, and then Ash himself getting sucked back in time for Army of Darkness,
1300 AD.
Yeah, and ends up fighting a harpy, which looks again like very much like something from Jason and the Argonauts. But the thing, I don't mention this either. That's the end of the film, by the way. But then
we've gone through every single scene.
Just about, yeah. There's a whole thing where, like, with Sam Raimi was wanting to do this, like a sequel to The Evil Dead, So this is obviously Evil Dead 2 is the carry-on from the first film, but a sequel he wanted to make to the Evil Dead was going to be called The Medieval Dead. So
right.
that's what Army of Darkness was. But I'm like, The Medieval Dead would have been a fucking amazing name to use instead of Army of Darkness, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh well, they may yet do it, but yeah, it's interesting that last sequence. So you have Raimi's cameo. You know, he's the knight who lifts up his what is it, face shield, I guess, and then starts praising Ash. I guess that's probably in the sort of Hitchcock tradition of the director stepping in.
Yeah, man.
For a cameo. But then one thing I noticed is the very last frame of the film. So when we pull back so that you can see the castle, which was established in the flashback earlier. And then when everyone's like cheering, like some people are lifting their swords and some are lifting their fists. So the last thing you see is like essentially a giant fist obscuring Ash. So it's like he's just been like obliterated by a giant fist, and then it cuts to the credits.
I've never noticed that before, man.
Yeah, it's cool.
That's it. So, what do you think of it overall as well? What was the main things that sort of stood out for you?
I mean, well, I was gonna just get into Bruce Campbell basically because I think the film just wouldn't work nearly as well without him.
Yeah,
and it's interesting. He's got this. He feels like a film star from the golden era of Hollywood to me. He feels like sort of like Cary Grant or Gregory Peck or something, but then he's also got like the build of like an athlete, but then along with that he's also the comedy relief. You know what I mean? It's like you wouldn't usually have all those things in one person.
Yeah, man.
So it's just sort of testament to his talents.
If you ever go on his website as well, or it used to be like this, I'm not sure if it still is, but if you go on his website, it's actually kind of got, like, you know how you would have actors, I don't know if they still do this, but you know how it's kind of, back in the day, it had their range or whatever. So you've got him dressed up as a sailor, you've got him dressed up as a sailor, you've got him dressed up in like this other get up, this, so it's showing you his range and stuff, and he still has that on his website along the top and stuff. So I kind of has that like old school vibe kind of actor, I always thought anyway, like you're saying. And as well, the total perfect comedy timing throughout the film, that you're right, totally would not work with any other actor, I wouldn't have thought.
I think my favourite moment in the whole film of his acting is, you know, the part where Henrietta's trying to trick Annie by singing the song?
Yeah.
And then Ash just appears behind her. She turns to him and he just kind of slowly shakes his head like, no. But he doesn't say anything, you know, but it's all done that way. And it's funny because I'd not seen the films in ages. I couldn't remember if it was the line, it's a trick, get an axe, which I think is from Army of Darkness.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. But even like with no dialogue, it's just brilliant. Yeah,
man. No, that's what I was going to say, that he does that again in Army of Darkness for that bit. Totally, like, just stared matter-of-factly. But yeah, totally, man. That bit's amazing. Like, and it's that like comedy where he doesn't even have to speak. He just uses his facial expressions to get a laugh out of you and stuff.
Yeah.
And to be fair, not even by doing anything particularly outrageous, because it's probably the sort of thing that you would do in that situation if you knew it was a trick, you know what I mean? But,
yeah, exactly.
The thing as well, man, that he's talking about, like, in terms of the comedy and the acting and all this kind of stuff too, I'm just going to compare it slightly a minute to, like, I was watching, like, last week or the week before, started watching the Avengers films. I know they're not horror and this is off topic, like, but I couldn't do it. Like, I'm not trying to shit on any Marvel films or anything like that, because they're obviously popular and stuff too. And I like the characters kind of in individual films, but see, like, when you put them like in an Avengers film where you've got all the different like superheroes that are all together, the comedy in it, it's all the same. They're all like the same character, and it's all like deadpan, like quips. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I don't know. Like, when you compare something like when I was watching that and then watching Evil Dead 2, then it was just like with Bruce Campbell, where he's got like, he acts like more of an action hero, I guess, compared to those modern characters. For me, I would say anyway.
Yeah, I think the problem in a lot of those films as well is there are no real stakes. Like, it's always just some generic alien thing that they're telling you is a threat, but you don't really feel like it is. Whereas in this film, there's nothing but threat. Yeah,
I think sort of to compare it as well to, you know, the Evil Dead remake. Like, I don't really have much against the film. I think I would have probably enjoyed it more if it wasn't called Evil Dead, because I think that the story was different enough that it would have been successful without being like attached to the Evil Dead franchise. But the thing about that, because you're talking, I know you've spoken previously as well, just about Bruce Campbell with his gravitas. Like when it comes to that cast, it's you know, it's nothing to do with their performance or anything. I think like just comparatively with this film, it's just the way they look. You know what I mean? Like in the remake, it's like they're all beautiful. You know what I mean? They look like models. So you get the impression, or I got the impression, that they're basically just Californian rich kids. You know what I mean? And in the Evil Dead 2, you've got guys like Jake, who's got like sweaty, like balding guy that's like fat with teeth missing and all that kind of stuff. And Bobby Joe, who's got her like total like this personality that you don't want to mess with her, and Annie and Ed are like the academics, and Bruce Campbell's got this like sort of unconventional looking hero figure too.
Yeah, they feel like defined characters, whereas with that remake, I mean, I didn't like it at all. I just thought there were no memorable characters. The only memorable scene was the one at the end where it starts raining blood, but that actually felt tonally so different from the rest of the film that I just didn't care.
Yeah, I mean, the thing, as I say, like, I mean, if it hadn't been called The Evil Dead and they hadn't used the same sort of demonic sort of POV shots of going through the woods and all that kind of stuff, I think it would have been okay. I don't, me being a critic, man, I'm sure they don't give a fuck what I've got to say, but I'm just
I'm sure it made some money. My friend who I went to see it with actually said something quite funny, was, you've seen, there's the post-credit scene with Bruce Campbell's cameo, right? Have you seen that?
Man, I can't, I've only seen it like once or twice and I can't remember that, to be honest.
But yeah, it's like they couldn't afford to like build a set or something, so they just have him standing next to a light bulb and he just goes, groovy.
Oh, yeah.
The weird thing is, like, the lighting is so dim that it's like not even clear that it's him. Like, my friend was actually like, was it even him? Which is probably not what the filmmakers would want to hear.
Yeah. One of the things I remember that I didn't like about that as well was the fact that they had the Book of the Dead, that when the guy's like looking through it, it's got like motherfucker like scribbled in it and burn bitch and all this kind of, I don't know, it just like cheapened it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I didn't really. I was like, man, I was kind of at that point like, nah, this is fair play to the film, and it is a good film. Like, there's some cool stuff in it too. But I mean, just in comparatively to the actual these films, the Raimi ones, I'm just like, I could watch it, but I don't love it like the same as these ones, I would say.
Yeah.
Again, like Campbell's performance as well. I kind of feel like it's like that over the top sort of campy performance almost. And I kind of read a thing as well with him, where he basically said that he would love to see an Evil Dead 2 remake, because the 2013 one was just like, it was made, in line with the first Evil Dead film that Raimi had done, so it was like serious right through and stuff like that.
Right.
But certainly after that, I don't know how I'd actually feel about an Evil Dead 2 remake. It's one of these precious things where you just like, I don't know.
It'd just be like a Saturday Night Live sketch.
You think someone could pull it off?
No. In a word, no.
Yeah. It's timeless in itself, not to be messed with.
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna see if there was any other points about how they shot it. So, compared with the first film, I think although Campbell was kind of risking life and limb with a lot of his performance, they were a bit more sensible with the camera moves, because there was an actual crew involved and unions and everything. So it wasn't like I believe it's the first Evil Dead film, they did a shot where Sam Raimi was on either a bike or a motorbike and just drove into the cabin with the camera to get the sort of chasing shot. So I think this time around it was like, nah, we can't do that. But they still had things where they would put like Sam Raimi on a blanket while he had a handheld camera and like drag him around the cabin.
All right.
Yeah, that's quite fun. It was. We were talking earlier about just the kind of style of effects and things, and one of the effects guys on the documentary said it's like you don't always want perfection. Sometimes imperfection kind of makes it more enjoyable. Yeah, and I think that definitely applies to this film.
Yeah, man. They're I think they were just kind of rolling with it at the time, and like making, there wasn't. I don't know. It wouldn't be. I don't think it'd be absolutely precious about every single shot. I think that got kind of brought up as well in the fact that when the guy was talking about Raimi's storyboards, they were basically like stickman drawings. So
they basically take the piss out of them on the documentary. They're like, "Yeah, this is what he gives us," and calls it a storyboard. You're like, "Oh, right, okay."
Yeah. I'm just going to quickly, I suppose, talk about the influence that this film's had. Yep. Both laterally and then, I guess, at the time too. So I mean, like, this kind of spawned a whole bunch of things afterwards as well. It became kind of like the benchmark, I guess, for cinema for this kind of splatstick humour, as it were. So you kind of end up getting films coming along like Shaun of the Dead and Black Sheep, and then there was a big Asian market kind of came along with films like Itchy the Killer. And I think they've got quite a lot of modern ones as well, kind of flying the flag. And I mean, we could probably go into a huge topic here because it ends up being like a family tree where you get all this shit that goes off from other things. It's all evolved, man. It's like evolved, branched out into weird subgenres and stuff. So I guess modern ways you could kind of trace movies from like Saw and Hostel kind of all the way, back, and the same sort of 2000s, the French horrors like Martyrs and Frontiers. They kind of got like their influence in there too.
Yeah, I mean, I know that Edgar Wright was highly influenced by Evil Dead 2. And if you see his films, it's quite obvious from the camera work and some of the editing. And he often puts on double bills of Evil Dead 2 and Raising Arizona.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
I can't remember where exactly he did it. I think it was at the New Beverly, which is the cinema that Tarantino owns in LA.
Oh, cool.
And then another one in Canada that I've forgotten the name of.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that as well, man, with Tarantino, man, that kind of like leads me into the bit, because I was going to talk about him at the end, because he was one of the ones at the time, actually, when we were talking about Stephen King and Twilight Zone magazine selling the first Evil Dead, saying it's awesome. That was when he like totally got into it. I think he became an absolute massive fanboy. Went to see the Evil Dead on the opening night, just because I think he was saying there was like a different buzz around that film compared to other horrors that were coming out at the time. And then there was like Eli Roth as well, your boy there. You went to the Cayley with.
Oh, I met Eli, all right. Good lad.
I think he was saying that like he was blown away by the film just because the fact that it was Raimi was like 21 years old, and obviously like making movies around like North Carolina or wherever it was, and it kind of was that realization for him that it's like, oh man, you can make a movie without actually being a part of Hollywood.
Right.
I suppose the biggest credit or praise coming from someone would be like Del Toro. Went to see it in Mexico City, and read actually that he said that Raimi's camera work was a revelation, which is something that all the directors seem to mention. He was going on about how gross out comedy wasn't easy to achieve, but the way I was laughing is that he described the first Evil Dead film as being the cinematic equivalent of Nevermind the Bollocks.
All right, okay. Yeah, kind of ripping up the rule book.
Yeah, man. So then he was sort of mentioning as well, like the use of prosthetics and little moments of digital effects that were beautiful yet discreet. He said that every filmmaker in Mexico City loved it, even the ones that didn't like horror, just for the camera work, using mounted cameras and spinning shots. And James Cameron said it's one of the most important films in the last 20 years because it pushed the medium and narrative pitch more than anyone.
Right, yeah, because I was thinking, the bit when Ash spins the shotgun? I think it's just before he says groovy, probably. He does this little twirl thing.
Yeah, when he's like arming up.
Yeah, exactly. So I was thinking that probably was the influence on Schwarzenegger doing that in Terminator 2. I don't know if you remember the big truck chase. He kind of spins the shotgun a bunch of times.
Yeah, man.
So if Cameron was such a big fan of Evil Dead, he probably got it from that.
Took it from that. There you go, man. That'd be pretty insane to think that Evil Dead's inspired in Terminator. Like, that's it.
Yeah. Robert Rodriguez is a big fan. I think they said Frank Darabont. And in an interview with Tarantino, he's talking about how a lot of Hong Kong cinema in the 90s was trying to emulate the Evil Dead 2 style. He doesn't get into specific films, but I was thinking there's a series called Troublesome Night that seems like it could have been highly influenced by Raimi. Okay. Yeah, similar kind of mix of comedy, horror, and crazy camera work.
Yeah, man. I kind of seen what was I reading, man? There was I read something. I've got a note here, actually. Can't remember who said it. There was a guy that basically said that the spectacle of the violence replaces any pretensions to narrative structure because gore is the only part of the film that is reliably consistent.
Don't know if I agree with that.
You don't agree with that, did you say?
No, I mean I think it's got a pretty decent structure. I mean it's not perfect, but it works in terms of. I guess if you think about it in the terms of like a hero's journey, like it goes through that whole thing where Ash has to rise up to fight the Force at the end.
Yeah,
and
totally.
You could argue that it's not his hero's journey isn't really complete until the next film, but still he's on his way.
Yeah. And I think this guy mentions as well, which is actually maybe something that might go back to what we were talking about there, He goes on about how the films have got like these manic montages that are full of subject camera movement that cross-cuts from hunted to hunter, an ominous juxtaposition in contrast. This is language that I do not understand in terms of it, but maybe something that you could pick up on there. I guess maybe that's the bit I was on about with the manic montage thing. Might be like I was on about that bit where they're all following like in sync their heads and all this kind of weird stuff that's going on. I don't know.
Yeah, it's that. It's also just the fact that you've got the demonic POV, which I guess was quite unusual, and it's so effective. It's basically a guy running with a camera and then putting a disturbing growl underneath it.
Yeah, man.
It's extremely effective.
Yeah, I think it was the first. I think they were the first people. I'm pretty sure were the first people that did that demonic POV. Like compared to anyone, I can't really think of many things where it's been done since. To be honest, I know that Evil Dead took a lot of. Because we're kind of talking about the stuff there that came afterwards. Around about the same time, there was sort of other, like I mentioned at the start, where there was like Brain Dead and Bad Taste for Peter Jackson ones. Reanimator was released a couple of years before, and was also based, obviously, as we said, around that H.P. Lovecraft kind of thing. So there's got to be similarities there. And then there was saying in the 80s and 90s they had that kind of movies that were breaking through, like Chopping Mall, Evil Dead, Brain Damage, which is an insane film too, man, and Street Trash. Which came out in 1997 as well. I don't think you were a big fan of that one.
I've actually never seen it. I know that either you or another guy that we know had some like super special edition of it, and I'd never heard of it before. What's kind of interesting is the guy who directed that, he became one of the best Steadicam operators in the world, so he like works with James Cameron and all that now.
Oh, really?
Of obviously just decided directing wasn't for him after making that masterpiece.
Yeah, it's a pretty insane film. It's worth a watch. It's stupid, but it's good, and it's got a lot of like the kind of blood effect, gore, kind of crazy colours and things as well.
Maybe we'll talk about it one day on here.
Same deal with like the trauma films, like Class and Newcomb High and all that. We're kind of knocking about. But, I mean, basically all the films that you've got on Arrow Video. Basket Case seemed to be one of the first ones that was kind of. I think that was released in 1982. So, yeah, man. I mean, is there anything else that you want to add to anything?
People should watch this film. Hopefully they've watched it before this podcast.
Yeah, man. I'll put out a warning beforehand that don't listen to this if you haven't seen the film, but I'm sure maybe like several people that are listening have probably seen it.
Hopefully they have. Hopefully they have. It'd be unusual, I think, to check out a podcast all about a film you'd never seen, but maybe people do.
Yeah. Anyway, that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes our dissection of Evil Dead 2, which we rate 2 thumbs up, or 1 thumb up and a bloody stump, as Ash's case might be. Thank you for listening to episode 2 of the Black Sunday podcast. Join us next time. We'll be discussing the Asian zombie action flick from the year 2000, Versus. Until then, as always, keep it spooky.